What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Ben and Walker Movie Show. I'm your co-host, Ben Davis, joined by my other co-host here, Walker Holt, and we're excited to have a conversation with you about one of our favorite things in the world, movies. And our chests are just bursting with excitement on this one, Walker.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. In space, no one can hear you scream, but on this podcast, you can hear my terrible puns. Um, as always, as I always say anyway at the beginning of the shows, if this is your first time being here with us today, welcome. We're so glad to have you. But please make sure you hit that subscribe button, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. And also give us a follow over on our socials at Ben and Walker Movie Show so you can stay up to date with all the latest content that we have for you guys. Also, just in case I forget to mention it, if you're watching on YouTube, please comment down below with your thoughts on today's show. It really means a lot to us and it helps with engagement. It gets the word out about our show, and we always enjoy hearing your guys' thoughts and opinions. So please let us know your thoughts on today's show. Let us know your thoughts on Alien. Speaking of Alien, as the title would suggest, we're going to be talking about Sir Ridley Scott's 1979 science fiction horror classic, Alien, in honor of Alien Romulus hitting theaters as of this recording this weekend, but also because it's celebrating its 45th anniversary. If you aren't familiar with Alien, the plot synopsis reads like such according to Google. In deep space, the crew of a commercial starship Nostromo is awakened from their cryosleep capsules halfway through their journey home to investigate a distress call from an alien vessel. The terror begins when the crew encounters a nest of eggs inside of an alien ship. An organism from inside an egg leaps out and attaches itself to one of the crew, causing him to fall into a coma. Very straightforward premise, according to this synopsis. Kind of gives you a brief play-by-play of like really the first 30 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, the first act.
Yeah, but what is your relationship in general outside of the first movie with the Alien franchise, Walker?
It's generally positive. Generally, I have not seen all of them. I have not seen. I can't. I've seen Prometheus or what? What were the prequel ones?
You have Prometheus, and then you have Alien Covenant.
I don't think I've seen Covenant. I've seen Prometheus. I've seen some of the crossover films. I've definitely seen the first two. I've probably seen the first two. Not a ton, but I've probably seen them. 2 to 3 times as a kid and 2 to 3 times as an adult, probably. So like each
Okay.
watch, I remember there's certain things which we'll talk about that I remember. I always remember, and there's certain things that I'm like, it's like I'm watching it again for the first time. But it's generally positive. I've seen most of it. I haven't seen them all. I am with Romulus hitting the theaters. I have had some motivation, and us doing the show, I've had some motivation to work my way through again. But it's kind of a tough one to decide the order to watch them. I'm going with release date, but
Yeah, it's funny you speak of order. My watching of this series, like I would say in general, for my relationship with this franchise, I really like this franchise. I would not say I love the Alien franchise, mostly because Alien 3 to me, like I've seen worse movies. Like there are worse made movies for sure, but I hate that movie with such a passion. Um I don't like Alien Resurrection, Covenant, or not Covenant, but Prometheus to me is just a mess of a movie. But I kind of like Covenant a little bit. Not to step on a movie that just came out this weekend a little bit too much, but I really like Romulus a lot. But the first two films I absolutely adore. So it's a mixed relationship. But my relationship with this franchise is weird because going back to the order you just mentioned about watching it in, I watched these in a very weird order when I first saw them, like a very weird order. Was this the first one? that you watched? Like, when did you first watch Alien, and was this like the first movie that you watched?
Yeah, this was the first one
Series?
I've seen. So I think I've mentioned her several times on the show. We had a babysitter. My cousins and I had a woman named Felice who used to work for my grandmother and would watch all of us a lot, especially my cousin Andrew and I. And she was a movie buff, big time, and would show us. It was always the chance to see something R rated. Our parents got pissed every time, but like we would get to watch. She would like skip through some bad parts, things that were too graphic or any kind of too adult. But she would sell us on these movies with like the chess scene or something, or like she would just describe this thing, be like, yeah, let's watch that, and we'd watch it and we'd love it. I mean, all like Alien, Predator, RoboCop, Terminator, all those types. I mean, this was probably 1997, 98 when we were 7, 8 years old. Just like these movies blew our mind at the time, and they were probably
Yeah.
between 10 and 15 years old, each of them. Um, so I credit her with a lot of my movie fandom. I mean, she kind of got me into movies unknowingly at a really young age, and that like um, mentality or that spirit has stayed alive, and it's stayed alive with my relationship with my cousin, where we a lot of what we do is based on a lot of our connection is based on movies and Star Wars and things like that. And that's really cool, I think. But I don't know why I got onto that, but she showed it to me for the first time, and I mean, I was young. I mean, I didn't quite understand everything. I was probably very scared for a lot of it. Probably a couple parts were skipped through that I wasn't supposed to see or something, and but I remember it blowing my mind and thinking it was incredible. And since then, I've seen it here and there. Um, but watching it as an adult felt like watching it for the first time all over again with a little bit of nostalgia sprinkled in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the experiences like that when you watch something as a kid and it has such an impact on you, and then you watch it again as an adult, you can't help but like look back on it with, I don't want to say nostalgia blinders, but like you look back on the fondly, and it makes you view the movie and a little bit more. You have a little bit more of an emotional connection to it,
Yeah, and I
and I
mean,
don't think that's a
like
bad thing.
when you say blinders, I mean it's not wrong. I mean it. I mean bad movies too. I mean movies that aren't. I mean, Predator 2, we loved it with Danny Glover. I mean,
When
I don't
Gary
think that.
Busey gets cut in half by the
Yeah,
giant thing, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we thought that movie was incredible. Like the scene where he like goes through the apartment. We thought it was so good, and I mean, I don't think it would get the same score for me now, but at least there's some nostalgia there.
Well, it's funny you bring up Predator. So
Mm-hmm.
growing up, and I promise this comes back around
Mm-hmm.
to Alien. There is a connection with those franchises, and growing up, I was a huge Predator fan. Like I loved that first movie. Speaking of Predator, there's Dutch right up there. I figured it'd be a good time to pop him out um, for our show today, sitting beside Alien. But huge fan of Predator. That was always that and Deep Blue Sea were like my go-to movies at like Blockbuster or Movie Gallery. If they didn't have what I wanted in stock, you could always guarantee that those movies were there, and I would grab them and watch them. So I love the Predator franchise. Predator 2, much like you, I I liked it as a kid. I didn't love it as much as the first one, but I still thought it was cool. Like the train
Mm-hmm.
sequence with Bill Paxton. Speaking of
Mm-hmm.
Predator and Alien connections, they're there.
Yeah.
But I realized I was probably 9 years old, and they were going to do Alien versus Predator. Now, I was familiar with the iconography of the xenomorph, that iconic shot in the aforementioned Alien 3 of the xenomorph coming real close to Ripley's face. I was very, very familiar with that shot. I was familiar with that creature, but with them doing Alien versus Predator and me loving that first Predator movie so much, I was like, you know what? I really should give this Alien franchise a shot and dive headfirst into this Alien franchise. And as fate would have it, I remember the first Alien movie is technically the first movie I watched, but I only watched the first 30 minutes. And the reason being is because I recorded Alien, I think it was on Encore, um,
Mm.
on the DVR, and I watched like the first 30 minutes of it. I got to like the face hugging sequence when the chest buster came out or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like after he wakes up from a coma and the chest buster comes out, and I was like, yo, this is sick. Like I was like, this is right up my alley. This is gross. I can't wait to watch the rest of it. Well, I don't know what happened, but we had to leave the house. I think we went out to eat dinner as a family together. And then when I went back to watch it like the next day, it was gone.
Mm.
Someone had cleared some space on the DVR, and Alien happened to be on the chopping block
Tale as old as
because it
time.
was one of the longer things on there, holding up that much space. And from the time I saw that until AVP came out, I could not find Alien on TV. I'd always catch it super late, or it was never available at Blockbuster or movie gallery. So it felt like someone was playing like a prank on me. Like it just felt like the world was out to get me to make sure that I couldn't finish this movie. So technically, my first Alien movie was Alien versus Predator. And then
Okay.
shortly after that, and then shortly after that, because I had fun with that movie as a kid. I haven't watched it in a long time, so I couldn't really give you like an accurate review of how I felt. I liked it as a kid, though. I can say that. I had fun with it. I didn't love it, but um, after that, I watched Alien Resurrection. So I watched the fourth movie, which was did not leave a good taste in my mouth. I thought it was bad even then as a 10-year-old, but I did like the underwater sequence. I thought that was pretty cool. Uh, and then after that one, when AVP came out on, I think it was on DVD and VHS at the time, I rented it, but I also rented the first Alien movie, which was finally available for me to rent. Um, so I watched that probably January of 2005, I feel like, for the first time all the way through. And I just, to me, it was like watching Jaws in space. Just the
Yeah.
tension, the lead up. It wasn't slow, it was methodical. It was almost surgical in its pacing. And I think back then it had such a profound effect on me on how to properly pace like thrillers and horror films. And I've said on a previous podcast, this is something very stupid that I said. It was on the podcast I think I did for Sinister. Um, so this was before you and I started the show. Um, I said that Alien wasn't a horror movie. Why? It is a horror movie. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why I said that. That was so stupid. But yeah, that was the first time I watched it, and it was really really impactful. I think, given that it was what the third movie technically that I watched in the series, but also not technically.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah, but what is it that you think is about this franchise, like the Xenomorph itself, that just doesn't seem to want to die, and what makes it so iconic? Because since 1979, there's been so many movies and attempts at this franchise, for better and for
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on a sour note, I'd probably say money, but on a on a more pleasant note, I'd say I mean, well, this had that such an interesting one-two punch, you know, and I know we're talking about Alien here, but with the two movies coming back to back with two iconic, or at least now iconic directors, and also different tones between the two, and widely considered pretty much equally good. You know, I mean, like I
Yeah,
don't think anyone blames anyone for liking one more than the other. I think like it started off so, but it's not a lot of. I mean, I'm not saying. I mean, Star Wars 1-2 punch, Godfather 1-2 punch. They're great. It exists, but the movies are different too, and they're like iconic in their own kind of ways.
Totally
And
very different. It's like
um,
action horror versus sci-fi horror.
yeah, and for whatever that means. I mean, it means two good movies, but it definitely means it's interesting and it means it's memorable, and it's good. So I mean, I think those two things. I think maybe the timing that it came out, like, kind of so big in the 80s and 90s, and then these crossover type films maybe were more interesting or more, I don't know what it is. I don't know. I mean, it's they're blessed with a great foundation, and we'll get more into the movie, but the movie is, I don't want to repeat myself later, but the movie is relatively simple. It's like just a pure. It's
It's a haunted
not. They
house
don't
movie.
overdo it. Yeah, it's a simple movie executed well, but it does leave room for all sorts of lore. But they don't overdo it in the first one. They're not going to dive too deep into it. But there's these nuggets. I mean, it seems crazy that, and I imagine James Cameron. Whenever anybody's like, "Well, how are you going to do a second one?" It's like, do you not remember those eggs all over the place? Like it's like they leave these nuggets and they leave them untouched
Well, there's the
because
legendary story of him in the pitch meeting. I don't know if this is true or not. Of him writing alien on a board and then writing an S with $2 through, like as a dollar
no,
sign. That's
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 funny.
the legendary like story. I don't know how true that is or not, but
Yeah, but they just don't. The first movie, this movie we're talking about today, is simple, but it builds a foundation that you could run crazy with, and they have. That's what I
they
think. Yeah.
really, really have. I think it's you hit on something that I think is very true, and it is that these first two movies are so iconic for many reasons. Number one, I think this movie, again, on a macro level, it's a haunted house movie.
Mhm.
And it's a horror movie. It's a slasher flick, right? Where you have the final girl in Ripley making her last stand, and then in the sequel, it's a little bit more different in the sense that it's an action movie with horror elements, but it's taking the character of Ellen Ripley and making her an action hero. And
Yep.
it's not making her the stereotypical action hero. It's making her, and again, I don't want to step on aliens too much, but it makes her like not the macho action hero. It makes her like a unique action hero in the sense that it's she's leading through action through her femininity
Yeah, it's
versus
got maternal
masculinity,
instincts.
the maternal instincts, and it just there's something again so unique about that. It doesn't ever feel unauthentic. I'm saying this as a man, but it doesn't feel inauthentic to women.
Hmm.
It's capitalizing on the strength through femininity, and I think that is very, very iconic and very special for many reasons. And I think that's one of the reasons that it is these first two movies in particular have are so iconic. But also the micro of it all, talking about this movie specifically, it is talking about how corporations do not care about their individual workers and will sacrifice their workers if it means profit for them. But also, it's about the fear of sexual assault and the fear of pregnancy on a micro level. And I think there's something that's very like raw and primal about that fear that I think anyone can really connect to, um, which is what makes it terrifying. I think it's very like invasive and like it that's why it evokes such a response with the chest burster sequence, the face hugger. It just feels so gross. and invasive and not fun. That's
Mhm.
what appeals on the horror level. And I think that that is why, and of course, the xenomorph, like that design is, I knew about that creature before I even saw the movie. And as a 9-year old,
Mhm.
like it's such a good, creepy design. And it's, again, we'll get into this a little bit more later, but the way it's designed, why it's designed the way that it is, I think it again, very primal. And I think that that's why this franchise as a whole is so iconic. I know that's a
Yeah.
mouthful, but I think that that's why.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on Alien now as a franchise, or this movie, not as a franchise, but this movie in particular? Sorry.
Um, I mean, it's good. I'm watching it again. It's undoubtedly a classic. I understand. I mean, it's obviously a classic when you're watching it. I it's directed fairly creatively, or very creatively, and it's got I mean the design is very cool. I love the we've talked a lot about genres here, but it genre blends with the best of them in terms of like, I mean, I'm not, it's a horror movie, and it's kind of like the opposite of the second one, where I mean, it's a horror movie with like some action elements in there and like badass action elements. It's also very cool. It's just a sci-fi movie. I mean, it's got, I mean, it 78, 79 when it come out.
79.
Oh, it was, that's why we're doing, no, never mind. And it came out right after Star Wars. I mean, you could just tell it's just got some cool like set design, costume design. The AI on the ship is interesting. I mean, like it's just cool sci-fi movie, great horror movie, some cool action sequences. It's a thriller, suspenseful kind of. There's just a lot that goes into it, and I've said it a couple times already. It's an admirable, some of my favorite things about the movie is how it doesn't derail itself. It's simple. It's not too big of a movie. I mean, it's huge stakes for these characters on board, but it's simple and it's a pretty direct plot of what's
Focused.
going on. Yeah, and that's respectable. And then also the characters. The characters are I like the characters in this one. They like and we can talk more about that later. But I think what I also think like Ripley isn't. I mean, I think you like Ripley from most of the movie from the get go, and you respect her. But like, if you had never heard of Sigourney Weaver or this movie or anything, you start watching the movie. I don't think you quite know like who the hero is until you're watching. You know what I mean? And that's
It
kind of
does a
cool.
really
Like,
good job of that. Yeah.
yeah,
She
and
doesn't
it
even
just
get
feels.
top billing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It feels like a crew, and then and you don't. I mean, and you start to see like Sigourney is the one with her head on straight. She's the one who's following rules and um has a heart and all these things, or is balancing her heart and brain well. But she uh until like the third act of the movie, where you're like, oh, this is the badass of the movie. You know what I mean? You're not like you don't quite. I like that
She's the
about it.
smartest one in the crew. Yeah,
Yeah.
she is clearly the smartest one in the crew who, like you said, balances that heart and mind very, very well, which is why she lasts till the end, because she's the smartest person on the crew.
Yeah. I mean,
She's
she
following
seems
the rules.
unempathetic when she won't open the door. But then like, but then it actually is. It's just a difficult decision she has to make, or when she says like, "I'm not
She's
opening
the
the door, you got to
leader.
quarantine," and
Yeah.
then and so but there may be a hint of like oh she doesn't have a heart, and then later it shows that she has a huge heart, and then throughout the franchise it shows even more. I mean, yeah, um it's just a good straightforward film.
Yeah, you're right. I think, like when I watch Alien now, I think it's a blending of a lot of perfect marriages. Good simple idea, a lot of lore to build off of, incredible production design, fantastic, highly memorable creature design, excellent filmmaking. Uh, excellent cinematography, great performances that make you care about these characters despite them maybe not having as much on the page, but it's the performances that make them really stand apart from everything else. And then, of course, what we talked about, the macro and the micro of this first movie. Yes, it's a horror film, but it's also talking about certain things like when it comes to capitalism, fear of pregnancy, and sexual assault. All those things are there if you want to dive into it, or if you just want to enjoy it as a simple haunted house movie. It works, and I think that is why this movie works so incredibly well. And speaking of it working well, it's worked well for many people over the years. This is obviously a classic, and it has a high Rotten Tomato score, currently sitting at 93%, with the consensus being a modern classic. Alien blends science fiction, horror, and bleak poetry into a seamless whole. Um, I wouldn't call it modern anymore, but um, it, do you agree with this score?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I rated it at an 89, which I even wrote in my letterbox review. The score, I mean, 89. I mean, that's a great movie. That's a high movie. 8.9 out of 10. I felt like it. A lot of people have this movie higher than me, but I think it's excellent and a must see and an all timer. But I got an 89 out of 100.
I mean, I think this score is perfect. Rotten Tomato score actually probably
Mm-hmm.
reflects my opinion on it. I don't think this movie's entirely flawless, but I do think it's very freaking close. It's just the pacing of it all is so. That's the masterstroke of this movie. It is surgical in its pacing.
Mm-hmm.
It's methodical, and it works so well. It's lean, it's mean, it's scary, it's violent. It is, again, like I said, this perfect marriage of all these things coming together to make what is one of the more iconic movies ever and that we've ever done on this pod. Um, yeah, I think this is an accurate score. I think it's a must see. It's clearly a must see. I think.
Yeah, yeah.
But let's get into some fun facts here. And guys, there is a lot. I would highly recommend. There's a lot that we're not going to get to when it comes to the making of this movie, but going to the Wikipedia page, the IMDb page, which is where I get all our fun facts from. Like, this is there's so much to dive into. Heavy spoilers, a guy that I like listening to. I know you like listening to him as well, Walker.
Mm-hmm.
He did like a whole breakdown of this series, and it is really fascinating to listen to. But um, I would highly recommend doing a deep dive as well,
Yeah.
because especially if you love this franchise, there's a lot that you could take. But shredded condoms were used to create tendons of the beast's ferocious jaws in the movie, like where it opens up, and the slime used on the alien was KY jelly.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. He looks slimy.
Very gross, very slimy. I can almost just like, yeah, no, I'm good. Uh, the chest bursting scene was not filmed in one take, despite the myth. The scene was filmed twice. On the first take, the chest buster was able to cut through Kane's shirt, so the crew needed to reset the shoot again. The failed attempt is visible in the finished film since director Sir Ridley Scott, thought it made it look like the creature was struggling to push its way out and made the scene more violent. According to designer Ron Cobb, the two takes in the scene were shot from multiple angles, and about 40 minutes of footage was available for the screening. This is one of those also urban myths that like none of the cast knew that the chest burster was going to come through, but they all
Mm-hmm.
knew the scene. Like they read the script, they all knew it. It was the blood coming out. None of the cast were aware of the blood, the amount of blood that was going to come out when it happened. And
Yeah,
that was the shock and awe of it all. But it is like one of the more, again, we keep using that word, but it is the iconic, memorable scene from this movie, in my opinion, because there's nothing quite like it, especially if you haven't seen this movie for, like, I still vividly remember laying on the couch in our living room watching this scene and like jumping up when this scene happened. Like, oh my God, I didn't know that this was how this creature was like born. Like, this is gross. It's very iconic and very memorable.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Uh, the face hugger was planned to be painted green, but Dan O'Bannon, seeing the unpainted face hugger on set and noting how inventive its Caucasian flesh tone color was, argued for it to remain as is. And yeah, I would agree. That's what makes it
Definitely a good
gross looking.
decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a good decision. I mean that makes it feel, I guess, more realistic. It may, I mean it, and it is gross looking.
Yeah. It
It
looks
almost
like the
feels like a, it feels like an ocean creature or something, like, or something.
well, it's funny you should mention that. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to that in a minute. Uh, the dead facehugger that Ash autopsies was made using fresh shellfish, 4 oysters, and sheep kidney to recreate the internal organs. Filming had to be done quickly because the organic material will go very bad, very fast under the studio lights. And if I recall, there's a couple stories of crew members getting really sick because of the smell. And I was like, yeah, I imagine.
Gross.
Yeah, very, very nasty. Again, there's a lot of in this movie uh, phallic and yonic imagery, and this is one of those things for sure. You flip it over, what does it look like? You know, or the
Yeah.
aliens, the xenomorph's head. What does it look like? Again, you know, there's a lot of the egg opening up. You know,
Yeah.
um, H.R. Geiger's original illustrations that inspired the look of the alien, the creature had eyes. For the movie, Geiger insisted that the creature had no eyes, thus giving the bleak appearance of a cold and emotionless beast that hunts by instincts or smell. Fans have later theorized that the creature's domed head contains sensory organs that allow the creature to detect light and dark, or see via echolocation like bats, or electrolocation like sharks. Um, yeah, and also I think there's a couple of designs you can look at, and it looks like there's like a skull inside of it, like a human skull with
Yeah.
like hollow eyes and the nose. You can kind of see.
Yeah. Huh. The characters, so I mean the design is great and it's iconic, obviously. And there's, I mean, I imagine, I don't know, budget. I mean, the film is shot. I mean, it's not like I mistake it for a Raimi film, but some of the creativity with the shots almost remind me of some of the creativity Raimi has with the camera work. And
Hmm.
the creature, especially in the first one, I mean, you get an idea what it looks like, but it's never like satisfying. You never get like a
No.
good solid look at it. Like there's always strobe lights and gunfire and darkness and quick cuts, and it's like, what does this thing look like? I mean, you're seeing like pieces of it at a time, and I'm sure it's intentional to build mystery and suspense. But even when you get like the big scenes where you see a lot of them and you're even supposed to really see them, there used to be an attraction in Disney called Alien Terrestrial or something like that in Tomorrowland. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but it was similar to the alien at the end, like laying on that thing with the flashing lights. Like there was fog and lights, and like you see, it's like you're trying to see him, but you're scared you're gonna have a seizure if you look too close, and you just can't get quite the design down pat. I mean, later on you start to see him or it significantly better, but it is a great design.
It's very Jaws like in the way that the creature is filmed, where
Mhm.
it's the glimpses that leave more to the imagination and it makes it a little bit more scary. Um, H.R. Geiger's initial designs for the facehugger were held by U.S. Customs, who were alarmed at what they saw. Dan O'Bannon had to go to Los Angeles International Airport to explain to them that they were designs for a horror movie. The actual production design of the facehugger used by sculptors to make the real prop was created by Dan O'Bannon, as O'Bannon had trained as a designer. It's kind of, I mean, it makes sense. They are, like, if you look at some of those original concepts, they are striking, to say the
Yeah.
least.
So,
Um,
yeah, that would freak
the
somebody out.
alien, yeah, for sure. I mean, they still, like, I can't. I am a fan of the franchise. I can't even touching the Blu-rays. It freaks me out. I don't know. It's just I don't want to touch them. Like, like it's
Mhm.
just it's gross. The alien nest layer is flanked by walls that have portals with distinct vaginal similarities. Some have noted that the facehugger appears to be a fusion of male and female sex organs, most predominantly female. Swiss painter H.R. Geiger's artwork is often interpreted as being overtly sexual in nature. Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
it's all over the place in this movie. You don't
Yeah.
notice it, watching it when you're a kid, but as an adult and you're looking for it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is everywhere. Like, it's
Yeah.
very noticeable. Um, Go ahead.
No, I didn't say it. Sorry, I
Oh,
didn't say
I thought
anything.
you were about to say something. Writers Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett were inspired by World War II stories about so-called gremlin monsters that had supposedly stowed away on fighter planes. However, during early development of their script, they ran into a writing impasse while trying to work out how their alien could actually get on board the ship. Shusett came up with the idea the alien fucks one of them, which was eventually developed into the facehugger concept. This method of reproduction via implantation was deliberately intended to evoke images of male rape and impregnation, so both writers were adamant that the facehugger victim be a man. Firstly, because they wanted to avoid the horror cliche of a woman being depicted as the easy first target. Secondly, because they felt making a female the casualty of symbolic rape felt inappropriate. And thirdly, to make the male viewer feel more uncomfortable with the reversal of gender conventions.
It's interesting.
Very interesting, and I think the right move for
Yeah,
obvious
yeah. I
reasons.
mean,
It
that
worked
I think
out.
it's definitely more effective, but it's crazy that how that develops.
Yeah. It was Sigourney Weaver who came up with the idea of Ridley having a psychological crutch to help her survive, muttering, "You are my lucky star," while getting rid of the xenomorph. Sir Ridley Scott mentions how much flack he got from production studio because of how expensive the rights to the song were. Um,
They had to pay for that.
yeah,
I mean, she. I feel like she.
yeah.
I mean, she barely.
I
I don't even know the song,
It's
but
from
she.
us. I believe it's from Singing in the Rain.
Oh, she just barely
I
kind
think.
of. Did she even get a full sentence out of it? I feel like she
Uh,
kind of like was really
she
working and out of breath and stressed, and was just kind of like, "You are lucky."
she kept
Yeah.
yeah, she kept singing that over and over again, but it is a good detail. Like, it makes her more human and relatable that she is coming face to face with this monster and is purposely putting herself in harm's way so she can get this monster out of there, and she's calming herself down by singing a song. I think that that's pretty relatable. It's a
Definitely.
genius use of like a psychological cope by Sigourney Weaver. Um, Adding that little personal touch adds so much to the character, and it's just a little touch. Um, it's crazy that I had. You're right, though. It's crazy that they had to pay for that. Um, you talked about the creature never being or being like framed, like how
Hmm.
it's used. The creature is never filmed directly facing the camera due to the humanoid features on its face. Sir Ridley Scott determined all costs to dispel any notion of a man in a rubber suit. Filmed the beast at varying close-up angles of its ghastly profile, very rarely capturing the beast in its entirety, really up until the end.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, they answer all my
And
questions.
yeah,
It's
it's
effective.
very effective. Ridley Scott cites three movies as shaping the influence of the movie: um, Star Wars, New Hope, 2001: Space Odyssey, for their depiction of outer space, and then Texas Chainsaw Massacre for its treatment of horror. And you can really get a sense of that by watching this movie.
Really can. Very clear.
Mhm.
And not in a derivative. I mean, like in
No,
an inspired way.
yeah, inspired, not imitated.
Yeah.
Following the massive success of Star Wars action figures, Kenner marketed an alien toy for Christmas 1979. Hey kids, you want this alien action figure? Yeah. However, instead of 3 to 4 inch figures size used as they did for Star Wars, the alien figure was 18 inches and was not painted with figures of the Nostromo crew, or not paired with the figures of the Nostromo crew. While faithful to Geiger's design, featuring the hinged jaw, the figure was highly breakable. Due to the parental complaints, Kenner pulled the action figure. The toy has since become a collector's item, um, with minted box versions going for as much as 1,000. And then this is the first R-rated movie to receive tie-in series of toys marketed towards children. Listen, if anyone feels like the urge or the need to gift Walker and I some Xenomorphs figures, please do. We're in the look. We're in the hunt. I don't want to speak for Walker here, but I think he's in the hunt.
I'm Googling it. It does look very cool. I mean, yeah, so I have kind of a dream of having like a movie theater in my house one day, or a movie room that is kind of decorated with pretty interesting movie memorabilia. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that would be something that, I mean, I could see myself having a Revenge of the Jedi poster up. A I've been considering getting like there's a like a little gimmicky website that'll make fake VHS tapes for you and like make a slip cover for them and stuff like that. And I want one that
Yeah,
has Shazam on it, or Kazam, whatever. I don't even remember what it's called now. The Sinbad Genie movie.
Kazam.
Yeah, and the
Yeah, that doesn't exist.
yeah, and like even the Angels Have Eyes, I think is what it's called. The Keep the Change, You Filthy Animal movie. Like just stuff like that's
Yeah,
like kind of like discontinued or rare or something. I mean, or errant or something like that. I'm looking at them right now. It does look terrifying.
it's
It
just
lets you
like
kind of. It's like the best view I've gotten of the design too.
the thing is that what makes it so weird is that they're like, you know what, we're gonna capitalize because tonally, Star Wars and this could not be further apart. Like, I don't understand the logic of
Yeah, what,
doing action
who's
figures
buying
for
toys? Well, I mean, you got
kids.
you.
Yeah, but again, I am a rare individual at 9 years old that would watch something like this and not be affected by it.
Well, you're the
Um,
9-year old watching it, and the
most
30-year-old buying the toys too. You got both ends of it.
That's true. That's true. That's very true. I would definitely buy a Xenomorph action figure. I've had opportunities to get one, but I'm kind
They're
of
pretty
holding
cool.
out for. I'm kind of holding out for a Ripley and the mech suit and the Alien Queen. I want like a play set of those figures together, and you just press a
This one's
button, and Ripley says, "Get away from her, you bitch!"
bitch.
That would be
Yeah.
fantastic.
You
I'm giving
even
away
this
my action figure ideas.
this
You can make
toy even
money
has
off
like a
this.
translucent dome where you can, how
Really?
you like, how you can see through his head sometimes, like with the light inside his head.
Does, does it have the skull like I talked about?
I can't see it that closely. Let me maybe there's definitely stuff. There's either it's either painted. It's too. It's I can't see it close enough, but there's definitely like it made it look like there's something inside it.
That's pretty cool.
Uh, Yeah. I wonder if you could turn on a
What?
light. You know how it like glows at some points in there? I don't.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's cool.
it's the light shining through it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool, man. Well, listen, people listening, Walker and I are in the market. If you want to gift us this, we would really be appreciative. Thank you. Um, last fun fact we'll get to is this movie was originally scripted to end with Ripley escaping the Nostromo and her shuttle and the alien dying aboard the Nostromo. Sir Ridley Scott thought the ending was way too simplistic, so he negotiated the studio for an additional $500,000 budget and a week of filming to add a quote fourth act to the movie, showing how the alien had stowed away aboard the shuttle. Scott initially envisioned a very dark ending where Ripley tries to flush the alien out, but the creature climbs back into the shuttle. Ripley harpoons it, but it makes no difference. It runs toward her, slams her through the mask, and rips her head off. It would then sit on a chair, start mimicking Captain Dallas's voice, saying, "I'm signing off. Hopefully, the network will pick me up soon." The 20th Century Fox wasn't too pleased. According to Scott, while pitching this idea over the phone, there was a long and uncomfortable silence. Within 14 hours, a studio executive arrived threatening to fire him on the spot unless he changed the ending to the one where the alien would die. Scott later admitted that allowing Ripley to live on was the better ending, and I completely agree. I think that ending sounds stupid. Um, I,
Yeah.
I could not
Honestly, it sounded
imagine.
intense. I wouldn't like. I would have. I mean, it sounds intense. I'm sure they could have made something dark work. But I don't like the mimicking Dallas's voice. I don't. You don't want to
No.
end on this new like skill that like you that is far fetched. You got to buy into right from the
Right,
get go. You know, like
right.
then it's like, wait, you can do that? That is like you. I mean, it's just like cheap kind of. I do like
Yeah,
the fourth act though. I like the way it ended, and I do think it. I had forgotten about the fourth act honestly, and because it's been 10 years since I've seen it, and I thought
I
maybe.
was looking for that head to pop through in the hand because you could see the head,
Mhm.
and it's like I'm waiting for that hand or something to pop out, and it popped out. I was like,
Yeah,
yes, yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, I'm with you. It would feel cheap. It would feel stupid. I love the ending that we get because it sets up one of the greatest sequels, and in my opinion, and we'll get to this next week, but the superior Alien movie. Um, but yeah, I agree with the decision here. Keep it, gotta keep Ridley alive, man. Um, yeah. All right, now that we got fun facts out of the way, let's move on to our award section. We're going to start off, as we always do, with best scenes and moments. The opening shots in the Nostromo. This movie still looks gorgeous.
yeah.
Like
Um,
it looks beautiful, very lived in, and you get to see all the hallways, all the interior. It just gets you a vibe and a feel of this world that we're entering. It feels very much like Star Wars lived in, but
it's
very
very. It's
beautiful.
one of the. Yeah, for me, it's one of the most obvious um, images of inspiration for me
Yeah,
watching it, where it feels tangible, it feels real,
yeah,
um, and lived in and cool.
yeah. Discovering the derelict and the space jockey, aka the engineer. The space jockey is so cool. I mean, obviously, if you've seen Prometheus, you know what the space jockey is. It's the engineer. But up until Prometheus came out, there was so many like ideas of what this creature is. What is this? Why is it carrying all these eggs? And of course, the design of the ship itself is very cool, very unique. Um, just looks so massive in scale.
Yeah, did Star Wars take inspiration from this? What in their ship and maybe the prequels that looks kind of like this,
There's the
like a circle that's not. quite
complete.
complete.
Yeah, it's like the
Is it the
trade
trade one
blockade. Yeah, the
from
trade
Phantom
blockade
Menace?
from Phantom Menace. Yeah, maybe that's some sort of inspiration that they got. Looks
I
cool
don't know.
though.
It reminded me of it.
It, same. It wouldn't surprise me if that were the case. Um, Facehugger attacks Kane slash Ripley tries to uphold quarantine. The facehugger attack again. The the lights as kind of a warning, which originally was supposed to be like a spider's web, but they decided against that and they went with these lights that were actually being used for the Who
Really?
next door, and they borrowed the laser lights or whatever. And
That's cool.
it's so cliche, but it's also like it kind of gets by with it a little bit of the scientist just seeing something and automatically just being so stupid of, oh, I'm gonna put my head over something that's clearly like moving inside, and when you see it open up and then it just jumps at him, it doesn't like show necessarily like the struggle or the fight. It hits him, and then there's the shot of the derelict and it pulls away and he gets carried into the bay. But it's scary. It gets you. It's a good jump scare.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, I'm gonna say this several times. I can already tell I'm gonna say it about 3 times in a row here. I again, when I watched this movie like 2 days ago, it had been over 10 years since I had seen it. And
No.
before that, it had been 5 years since I'd seen it. Before that, I was 10 years old. So it had been a while. And there's some things I forgot. And in general, I mean, I understand. I remember the concept of the reproductive cycle of this thing, but a lot of it still shocked me and surprised me. And like, it's like, oh yeah, and then especially detailed stuff like design, which really impressed me a lot. Like, really one of my favorite parts about the face hugger is the neck part, the like its tail wrapped around
The
the neck.
cord that
That makes
wraps
it
it
that made
around.
it
Yeah.
that made it feel very just made me more uncomfortable about the. I mean, obviously something smothering your
All of it,
face.
yeah,
I mean
is
that's
uncomfortable.
that's brutal, but that part of it made it feel more violent. I guess
Yeah.
is what it did.
It's aggressive.
Yeah,
Like if you try to pull me off, I'm going to strangle you to death. You're gonna die either way. Like it's very, yeah, like you said,
yeah,
it's uncomfortable. But Ripley trying to uphold quarantine again, to me, this is what shows that she is the smartest person on the ship. She's not acting out of emotion. She's trying to be a good leader and someone who's trying to uphold the rules. And this is the first sign of maybe Kane having, or not Kane, but Ash having some ulterior motives, um,
yeah. But
with
it's
him
it's
breaking the
it's
rule.
yeah. Yeah, but it's well done because it's well. I mean, if you on second watch, definitely, but on first watch, it could easily pass as like this is my friend. It could
Yeah.
easily pass as like what are you talking about, Ripley? That's insane. We're not going to leave him out there to die. So it gets disguised very well, and it's a good performance from Ripley. I'll tell you, when I was a kid, or even as a young adult, her name being Ripley, uh, the director's name being Ridley was a mind fuck
Did
for
it
me.
mess you up? Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still like having to every time I see it or say it, I'm having to like manually decide which one we're talking about. Um, but yeah, it's a good performance from Sigourney, where she is having to say she's having to be the stubborn, strict bearer of bad news, but she's doing it by making a difficult decision and ultimately being actually empathetic, despite despite everyone around her disagreeing with her at the time out of emotion.
Yeah.
So it's
She's
well done by Sigourney Weaver to be able to see that balance in her making that decision.
completely agree. And again, it's the subtlety. Sigourney Weaver is such an excellent performer. Oftentimes the subtlety in her performance, the way that she's able to emote through her eyes is it's very unmatched, in my opinion. Um, she's able to do a lot by saying very little, and that is the definition of a good actor.
Yeah.
Um, Dallas and Ash perform surgery on Kane. Again, it's a very tense sequence. The face hugger choking, you discover the acid blood, realizing that this thing can't come off.
Yeah. Well, just the introduction of the acid blood is um crazy. I mean, that is one of and it's kind of subtly talked about, but it could I mean that's the game changer. So acid blood is a real big deal. And I mean it's obviously and again we're not going to get into it, but it's more
Excellent defense
it's
mechanism, or hell of a defense
yeah.
mechanism, is what he says in the movie.
Yeah, it's more thoroughly explored in the sequel, but it that I mean that's a big deal. That really ties their hands but or their face, but
Well, it's a great writing idea, because you're essentially getting rid of, oh well, they could have just shot him, because it's like, well, if you shoot him, acid blood is going to get everywhere, and it's going to tear a hole in the ship, and it's going to destroy the entire ship.
yep. Yep. Real pickle.
Yep. It is a great stroke of genius, I think. Um, Ripley and Ash have a conversation about breaking quarantine. I love the little subtle detail of like the little black thing you can see him looking at in his lung, like on the screen.
Okay.
It's the subtlety of him realizing that Kane has been implanted with this thing and he's inspecting it, but he's keeping it a secret.
Oh yeah, okay. I got you.
Um,
Yeah, the whole concept of Ash and the android. I um did not. That's one of the details I forgot. Even starting the movie, and when I was watching, the crew, I was real interested in Ash the whole time. Like I was like his performance was like it wasn't even in my mind that he was an android. I completely forgot that part of the movie. Did not remember it at all. And I was, what's this guy's deal? Are they trying to make us think he's bad, but he's actually okay? Does he really just not give a fuck? I mean, he is so like stone faced, or does he? And I had a lot of fun with that trickery throughout the movie this time. The reveal surprised me. I was interested in his character from the whole time because I was like, he's got to be up to something, or is he just weird? Is it just like this crazy, quirky character? And it
his
satisfied me.
performance gets better with each viewing of the movie, because it's the subtle little details that are added in that upon rewatch make it richer. His little Ian Holmes choices for the character. But above all else, I love how Ripley confronts him in a way that's not aggressive, but confronts him in a way of like, why did you do this? As someone who is like the medical, what's it called?
Science
He's
officer.
essentially, thank you, the science officer who's supposed to be following this code. This is stuff that you're supposed to be enforcing. You decided not to enforce it. Why?
Yeah,
I want to
yeah.
know
You would
why.
be the guy that would do it over anybody
Um,
else. It seems you would be the
yeah,
most likely to do it. That
yeah,
would you would act logically rather than emotionally.
yeah, and he didn't. And it's also noted that this wasn't the original science officer that they often travel with. Dallas talks about how like, yeah, like they replaced the original science officer 2 3 days before we took off. Um, and there's a reason why, as we find out as the movie goes along. Of course, the chest buster sequence again, subtle details. I love the way that Ash is just inspecting Kane because he knows what's about to happen. It feels like.
Yeah, I'll have to pay more attention to that. But yeah, I mean this scene, it
It's
doesn't even
intense.
need. I mean, it's
Yeah.
iconic. It's creative. It's gross and fun. Um, Bringing back during the marketing campaign for Romulus. It's fun.
Yeah. Um, Alien attacks Brett.
This felt like probably that was probably the most horror-y like sequence to me that felt. I mean, you were. I was pretty. I mean, it was pretty tense. Also worried about Jonesy the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, it's the you can see the creature in certain shots. You can see the xenomorph in certain shots if you're looking. If you're paying attention, you can see it. But it's the way that it drops down, the hissing, the and it's like there's something unnerving about it, and the way that it's inside of its mouth has another mouth and pokes through and penetrates the victim. It's yeah.
yeah,
Dallas goes into the air duct. To me, this is like a stroke of genius because it's the
yeah,
tension and the buildup of the tracker and it mimicking the heartbeat as it's getting closer and closer and closer. Your heartbeat's going up. The sound of that thing's going up.
yeah.
Um,
It's very tense, and when they're using these like life form sensor things to track them, and then
mhm.
if you and again, I keep doing this. I'm sorry, but they there's also a great scene with Paxton in the second one that really gets very tense for me. But when you can't see it, but you still know it's around, type of thing, or you're being told it's around, but you're like it's not here, and they're like, but it's there, and you're like, and you can just feel it.
Mhm. It's a sense of unease, and it is a
Yeah,
little goofy with the hands out, but it's still pretty effective. Um, Ripley realizes the true nature of the mission, which is, a company wants to bring that back, this specimen specifically, and they don't care about the crew. And this is also where you get Ash's assault, which is not, I would not call this a best scene or moment that I want to rewatch over and over and over again. It's not that. It's definitely not that, but it's very, especially
pivotal.
knowing the intention. But yeah, it's very, very pivotal in the plot and very, again, unnerving when you start to see like the milk or whatever it is, the fluid, the white fluid
Yeah,
come out of them, and the way that the attack goes down. It takes a while to get them down. Like it's just it's a very effective sequence. Um, Ripley escaping the Nostromo. It feels
yeah. I
like
like
it.
when she calls mother a bitch or something. When
Yeah,
mother says
you
something, I don't.
bitch. Yeah.
It's just at the same time she does it in the second one. It's just funny. Uh, yeah, it's tense, and they use that same trope twice in a row. With the you have 5 minutes to do whatever you gotta. Like
Yeah.
it's funny that they're like self destruct in 10 minutes, and you have 5 minutes to change your mind.
Yeah.
And it's like
It's
okay, so we're gonna have an issue.
it's so intense, but it's also, again, it's a character moment for her where we see her straight up leave the animal, leave Jinx, or what's the cat's? It's not
Jones,
Jinx, Jones,
Jones,
Jinx is
Jinxie Cat.
meet the parents. She leaves Jonesy. She leaves the cat down there to fend for itself with the alien. But
Yeah,
then she eventually comes back to it, realizing that she's forced to face the alien because she can't stop the self destruct. Um, of the ship, and she thinks she gets away. It's a very intense. It feels like it lasts for forever. Like it really does, but in the best way.
Yeah.
Um, and then you get the fourth act, which is very effective, especially if you ever haven't seen the movie, you're not paying attention to it. The hand popping out and the
Mm-hmm.
alien being in the escape pod, and of course her singing the song and her shooting the thing out of the air ducts. It comes back, but then it gets trapped in the jet, the engine, and then it gets blown off into space.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
does, don't want to spoil or anything, but it does tie into Romulus. But
I think
very effective.
the clothing change too, I think is iconic too, where she changes to get into like stasis or cryostasis or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then slips into the astronaut um outfit, and you're kind of like, what's going? I mean, I think I mean, you get it pretty quickly, but at first I was like, is she hiding in that suit, or is she about to what's that? And then you're like, oh yeah, she's gonna open the thing up.
Yeah, she kind of has but it's a very effective fourth act because you think the movie's over and then it comes back. And this is a trope in this one and in Aliens and in Alien Romulus. You think the movie's over and it's not. There's something else around the corner. But
Mm-hmm.
out of all these sequences, unless you have more to add, what's your favorite?
I mean, I like a lot of these. I like the movie. I can't not say chess person.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
mean,
I agree.
it's how Felice talked me into watching this movie. It was the scene I looked forward to the most. Any sort of reference to this movie, I it's hard for me to believe anyone thinks of this movie and isn't like, oh yeah, that part.
Yeah.
Like I mean, it's and
It's
that's just the scene. It was just so creative and iconic and scary and gross. Um, I think people know about that scene who don't know the movie as well. I think it's kind of. I mean, maybe it's not. No, I'm your father, but it's a similar, like, people who've never seen the movie know, like, in the chess one. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, it's the most memorable scene from the movie, and I think it's the best. It's the most effective.
yeah. If I win another one, it would be the fourth act. I think it was. I enjoyed that. It felt big when it was happening. It felt really good.
I agree. Uh, Worst scenes and moments. I only have two listed. It's the Ashes Assault, which is also the best. It's just like I don't want to watch that, knowing what it's supposed to be, like what it's supposed to represent. Um, I don't like it,
Mm-hmm.
but I get why it's in the movie. I'm not saying it shouldn't be in the movie. It's it's an effective sequence. It should be in the movie, but it's like I don't really want to watch it. Um, the shots of Dummy Ash's head. There's like two
Is
of them.
that
It's very
when
like
he's
noticeable.
oh when he's
Just the
talking, or
head.
when he's after he's turned off, or both?
So it's when he's turned off and they're turning it on, and then they like obviously change it to Ian Holmes' head just poking through the table, and then they pull the
Yeah,
shut off button or pull the shut off button or whatever, and it's obviously a dummy head, and then you look back at it again, and it's like this weird smiling face. Like it just that
yeah. So that I hated that. I actually, while what's his name, the actor?
Ian Holm.
While Ian Holm is like live and talking through the table, I actually thought that was shot pretty well.
Yeah, that was.
I thought that was like, it looked good. I didn't notice it when they turned it on, but when they turned him off and he just turns into a weird wax ball, I was like, oh, that they could have tried a little harder on that one. That one didn't
Yeah.
look good.
Yeah, that doesn't look good. It doesn't look good.
No.
I think for that reason, I think that has to be the moment because Ash's
Yeah.
Assault again. I don't like rewatching it, but it's not a bad sequence. Like it's
Yeah.
very effective. It
Yeah.
has a
That was the
purpose.
word. I mean, and if you're getting, I mean, I'm usually a little prick about like effects, special effects. I wish I was a better person about it. I'm usually I like to just bad special effects piss me off a lot of the time. You know what I mean? And I reference a lot of like iconic movies that did it better 40 years before now, especially. You know what I mean? And um, so I notice things that they just kind of like feel silly to me. You know what I mean? Like and like if and that would be one of them. The other one, this is so nitpicky. I mean, it's so nitpicky. The little after the chest burster scene, when that little thing runs away, it looks like someone's like it's just like someone. I don't. It just looks like oddly fast and like weirdly.
It like scampers across. It's like it looks like it's
Yeah, it's
moving
like
like that.
it
Yeah,
just seems so like I was like that looks silly, but yeah, I would give it to the head.
yeah, agree. Agree. Best performance. I think this.
I mean, it's Sigourney Weaver for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, she
yeah.
she handles the subtlety. She handles the head and the heart. She's an action hero at the end. It's different. I mean, she's we've talked about it the whole podcast. She's great.
She's wonderful. Um, does this make sense award? I only have one thing for this, and it's why does the Xenomorph conveniently wait for Ripley to put on her spacesuit? Was it like stuck in there? Because like when it falls out, it's kind of weird. Look, like it's clumsy. Like it's like it was stuck in there. She like presses something or it knocks something, and smoke starts going everywhere, and it's like and it falls out.
I I
Like
I I didn't understand it either. I didn't think about it in the terms of the spacesuit. I guess that makes sense. I don't know what I thought, but I was like, what's happening in there? Like I thought it might be stuck, but then they never talked about it more. Sorry. One more thing about Sigourney Weaver. I was saving it for this part too. And I think it probably I don't know if some of it should be due to the script or not, but um, you mentioned something earlier about it like making it feel more human, more real, like her performance, and like she did several little things throughout the movie like there could be like a like what like she like didn't hear someone say something and then repeats it, but it's not like it's just a subtle little like she would ask what she would repeat herself. She would just little things that made it feel authentic that were not impactful at all to the movie. I mean, like well, in terms of the plot, I mean, they weren't impact. Like it didn't make any difference. It wasn't. She didn't say what to like. I mean, maybe it was because she was distressed, but little things like that just made it feel like a more authentic performance to me that
it's
stood out to me
adding
the whole time.
more. Completely agree. It adds more to what's on the page. Like she
Yeah.
brings more to it, and again, that's what makes her such a wonderful world class actor. Like she is just outstanding. I think she's slightly underrated. Like I really do. I don't think enough people give her enough credit. I think she only has one Oscar nomination, which is insane once
For
you think
what?
about it. Next week's movie,
Oh,
Aliens,
okay.
um, which I'm sure we'll
Oh,
talk more about. But it's crazy to
yeah.
think
Well,
that
that one
they.
she owns that whole movie. You know,
Oh
this
God,
one,
yeah,
like we said earlier, the a different type of genius. It felt very much like a crew movie and who's next, and it truly meant who's next, and you started to like her more and more, and she became like the hero and owning the movie in the third. You know what I mean? That's what it felt like to me. And then
yeah,
you know who Ellen Ripley is by the beginning of Aliens, and this is her movie to run now. Um,
yeah.
which we'll talk about later. But the yeah, I don't know if it was stuck or not. I did notice that it was taking a weird long amount of time, and I don't know if that was a convenient plot. But I mean, I don't know when things like that happen. It's always like I don't know. Part of me wants to say it's interesting. I don't know what's going on with that. He might have
It's
been
it's
stuck.
it's like
He's
it
big.
got
He's
it.
awkward. His head really hard to
It wedged
not a
itself
shit
in
built
there,
for.
and it's like I can't get out. But just wait, I'm gonna show you my inner mouth. Like it's just
Yeah.
like yeah, no, it's kind of awkward and weird and
When
staged.
did the term xenomorph come
You were
about?
asking the wrong guy. I'll
Is
have to
that is
ask.
that
I
the
think it's
commonly used
yeah.
terminology for him?
I think it
The
came
abandoned
up.
alien.
I think it came up in Aliens. I will ask my friend Eric because he's the bigger Alien fan for sure. Anytime I have any questions on Alien, I go to him, and he has my back on it.
Nice.
Which I hope we have not let him down. He's going to be listening to this podcast. I hope we have not let him down on our Alien pod. He'll be sure to let me know, I'm sure. But MVP of the movie, because I that's the only thing I have for does this make sense, and it's like, we don't really know. But MVP of the movie, H.R. Geiger. I think the design of this is so iconic; it's hard not to say
Yeah,
him.
that's a great pick. That's a great pick. I mean, juxtapose it with Ridley Scott. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it was shot very well. I've mentioned several times the way the alien was shot, added tension, added suspense, made it scarier. Maybe helped with budget. I don't know, but I mean, there's a lot of things that like made it like.
Well, this was only his
Um,
second movie, which is crazy. I think The Duel was number one, and then it was this one.
not really.
Yeah.
Um, it I just thought it was shot, and they did a great job of scope and scale and tension, and um, enjoyed it.
Yeah, completely agree with that choice. Can't go wrong with either one of those choices, H.R. Geiger and Ridley Scott. But at the end of the day, Walker, we've been talking about it now for about an hour and 16 minutes. Why would you recommend this movie?
Oh, I mean, it's I said I didn't want to repeat myself a lot, but I'm going to have to. We've been talking about it a lot. It's a classic film, and it's a this particular film is a I think it can stand alone. If you just want to watch this one movie, or if you want to watch all 45 aliens they've made since then, go either way. I think you'd be satisfied with this film, or if you want to explore it deeper, you certainly can, but it certainly stands on its own 2 feet by itself and is great. It does an amazing job of blending genres, which we talked about a lot. It's got horror, but it's kind of like a fun horror with suspense and thriller, and there's some action elements of badassery. Great group of characters, wonderfully directed, and cool science fiction, and a little ahead of its. I mean, it's ahead of its time. It's just a good, simple, pure movie.
Yeah, it breaks a lot of, especially at the time, a lot of genre conventions, um, and expertly subverts expectation. And I think has inspired so many films over the past 45 years it's been out. It is one of those movies that just breaks the mold and starts its own mold, and everything is trying to follow it. And it successfully has become one of the most iconic movies of all time because of that. So yeah, I would recommend watching it because it is simply one of the more iconic movies ever. And if you consider yourself a movie fan, um, I would highly recommend at least checking it out. See how you feel.
It's awesome. You got anything else for us?
No, man, I'm all I'm all done. I have been face hugged, and I feel like I'm about to give birth to an alien right now. So,
All right, we'll do that off camera. Well, that does it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. If you're hearing us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, thanks for watching. If you're catching us on YouTube, be sure to comment down below. What do you think of Alien? Which one's your favorite in the franchise? If you are a fan of the franchise, stick around. Come back and see us for what we have in store for you this month, and you can prep you to go see Alien Romulus in theaters. But with that said, this has been Ben and Walker, and we'll see you next time.